Missed an episode of your favorite podcast? Choose from over a decade of content in our archives, not just the latest episode. All free at GCNlive.com.
This is your call to action. Get prepared, America. Economy, survival, energy, disasters. This is USAPrepares.com. Informative radio, educational radio. Interact now by emailing instructor@USAPrepares.com or text at 434-390-7953. Class, please take your seats. Now, your instructor, Vincent Finelli.
Everyone all set, cocked, locked? Here we go. Your dial set correctly to USA Prepares. Thank you for being with us today. We broadcast 2 hours from high atop the Missouri Ozark Mountains. Nathan is engineering the broadcast at GCN. I'm Vincent Finelli. If you'd like to call us, here's the call in line. 866-582-9933, 866-582-9933. Telephone listen line, 605-477-3249. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. Welcome, Rick.
And boy, was that by the seat of the pants. Yeah.
Well,
nobody knows what that means, but you can explain.
Well, I'll be glad to explain. So, class, here's how it goes. At 9 o'clock, I've got an atomic clock. Actually, I have two of them in case the batteries in one of them quits, which has happened a couple times since I've been broadcasting. So I have two atomic clocks. One that is a digital, one that is analog, and I watch the analog clock. I don't like the digital one, but I have it as a backup. And so I watch the clock, and at 9 o'clock I connect. And at the same time, our engineer is connecting with Dr. Richard Allen Miller. Now, normally when I connect on, I've got a computer screen that's connected to some software remotely at the network, and I can hit a button, and I will connect digitally through high-speed digital to GCN. Well, when I hit the connect button, within a half a second, literally, I will hear what's called the traffic. The traffic is what is going out over the air. That's news, commercials, and all that. So I hit connect, boom, I hear the traffic, and I know I'm connected, everything's good. I can verify all this by looking at another screen that has, I've got connection information, I've got statistic information about delays and so forth. I have audio metering that I can click, and I can look at the view meters of the signal coming from me, the signal returning from me to me. But this morning when I clicked connect, I did not hear the return or the traffic. There's just silence. That's not a good feeling. And the reason for that is different engineers leave the board differently at the end of their shift or at the end of the show they're engineering. So they may turn down the feed from the network to me, so I may not hear it. Well, that's what happened this morning. And so I usually wait a couple minutes because I know the engineers are busy. Nathan's really busy, getting the connection up with Rick Miller. He's got me. The phone's ringing at his end. He's trying to do 7 things at one time. So I wait and wait and wait. And then a couple minutes before going live, I called and I called Nathan, and he said, I'm working on getting Rick. And then Rick called, and Rick was saying, hey, no one's gotten the connection up. And so I called Nathan, so there's plenty of calls going to Nathan. And then literally 2 seconds, maybe 3, before the broadcast started, Nathan said, I've got Rick, and there we were. So just made it. Made it.
It was like the nick of time, like where I'm slapping the baton, and you ran across the finish line. It was cool.
That's exactly right. So, Rick, I'm looking at CNS News, and there's a study that was done about how many people, 25 and older, residents of the various states who never finished ninth grade. Okay? So California, leads the nation in the percentage of residents 25 and older who never finished ninth grade. Texas is second. New York is third. New Mexico is fourth. Kentucky fifth. And down at the bottom, you've got Wyoming has only 1.8% of the residents of Wyoming have not finished ninth grade by the age of 25. But at the top of the list, those who have not finished, California is number one with 9.7% of the residents never finishing ninth grade. Can you imagine that? Ninth grade.
No, I can't imagine that. Worse, it's an embarrassment as supposedly the richest and most technically advanced country in the world, the United States, to be so far down. When I was in graduate school, I remember these statistics where the United States was number 6 in the world for education. And the reason it was up so high, like not number 1, was because of our graduate schools. Our graduate schools were the best in the world because of toys. And the education prior was at that time considered an embarrassment. Why there's only a 3% that's not graduating? Did you know that today in Oregon, in Josephine County, where I live, only 73% graduate high school?
Yeah. And high school's not that hard. It really isn't.
Well, it isn't that hard anymore, because when I was in school, in second grade, you learned Latin. Sum est, sumest esticent. And I'm going to say something. I am embarrassed to, I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to go there. I'm just not going to say it. It's just everything is broken. You can't believe anything that you hear on the news anymore, whether it's right or wrong, because at one point it was Walter Cronkite was something that I looked forward to every night, getting the news of the world and what was going on in other parts of the world. When he retired and Dan Rather came on, he was not as believed as Walter Cronkite and Charles Kuralt. And what happened next was that you would start to switch over from CBS, which was considered at that time the primary, with ABC and NBC being number 2 and 3, and you start listening to CNN and Fox. Today, they are the worst. In fact, ABC has aligned this way like CBS and NBC have gone in that way, kind of like the Republicans and the Democrats. And to see today's concepts of Democrats and Republicans is, again, a serious embarrassment. A Democrat, I remember the look on my father's face when he realized he was no longer a Republican. And then to be a Democrat, liberal. And yet today they advocate violence. What's going on? Well, it's no longer Republican and Democrats. It's nationalists and globalists. And the agendas are so wicked as to try to undermine the United States from within the sides, where the Republicans are trying to discredit the Democrats. It's an embarrassment. Now,
okay. Let's look at where the percentage of residents 25 and older have a bachelor's degree. So that would be a BA or a BS degree. Bachelor of Arts, Bachelor of Science. Massachusetts leads the country with 42.1% of its residents with a BS or a BA degree. Colorado's number 2, Maryland's number 3, Connecticut. Number 4, New Jersey is number 5. Vermont has 36.8%. New York has 35.3%. Now, California is number 14 with 32.6%. Oregon, 32.3%. Let's see, I'm looking for Missouri. Missouri is number 32 with 28.2%. Bottom of the list, West Virginia. Second to last, number 49 is Mississippi with 21.3%. Interesting. But how did this happen? Now, there's another statistic. The percentage of residents 25 and older. Now, we're talking 25 and older, okay? There's plenty of time to get through elementary school, high school, a 2-year college, and a 4-year college. 25, okay? 25 years old and older. The percentage of residents 25 and older who graduated from high school or higher, maybe 12th grade. California is number 1, okay? They have, I'm sorry, that's not true. They're number 1 they're at the bottom. Sometimes these charts are upside down, okay? 82.5% of the residents in California graduated high school or higher. Texas would be California would be 50, 49 would be Texas, Mississippi would be third at 83.4%. The number 1 state with the most graduates is Montana at 93%.
Well, there's Rick Sheaben out there hanging out in the underwoods.
Yeah. Now,
I'm embarrassed about the whole thing. Then there's no excuse for that. It used to be, where I live in Oregon I'm probably in the center of the West Coast, going from length, girth, and width, except for Alaska. I'm down in southern Oregon. And when somebody now asks me where the Mexican border is, my comment is usually something like, 60 miles north.
Yeah, when we come back, I'd like to share with you something that's going on with privacy and what advertisers are doing with emojis. This is unbelievable. Last night I was in the kitchen and I made some remarks about Mark Zuckerberg. And I said, gosh, that guy's ugly. And Mrs. Finelli said to me, that's not very kind. He can't help the way he looks. You shouldn't talk about people the way, people's looks. They can't help it. And I said, he's ugly in thought, word, and deed. And with all of his money and connections, it's surprising that Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, Alan Greenspan, and Harvey Weinstein haven't gotten face transplants. And because you think about those people, they are ugly in every respect. And I was talking to Rich Sheaben last night about, guys like, that are considered philanthropists, like Bill Gates. Philanthropists. They're the opposite of philanthropists. They want more money. They want more and more and more. And they give a little bit away so they can be touted as philanthropists. But in my opinion, they want to eliminate people. Bill Gates is in the population reduction business. He wants to inject people with vaccines that this is my opinion, that will limit population or eliminate population. Any comments before we go into privacy, Rick?
No, I don't want to even go there.
Okay.
Okay. Really.
Well, I'll stand out there.
Dang.
I'll stand out there on the ledge by myself. Okay, so privacy fears. Now, this is on dailymail.co.uk. Privacy fears report advertisers track which emoji, E-M-O-J-I, you use to determine your emotional state. advertisers have begun serving up ads to internet users based on their emojis. So, for example, if a user tweets a pizza emoji, they might get a reply from Domino's Pizza. Twitter has allowed advertisers to track emoji use on its service since 2016. Now think about that, class. You're feeling kind of sad and you use an emoji. You're being tracked. Oh, she's sad or he's sad. Pizza, you're going to get an ad from Domino's. Well, let's see, Toyota. I'm trying to get to the point about Toyota. Oh, Bill Gates has really got, what a crappy operating system Microsoft Windows is. Okay, in 2017, Toyota ran an ad campaign that aimed to match people's moods based on their emoji use. The car maker created 83 different versions of the same commercial based on different emoji and published the ads on Twitter. Can you imagine that? You're being analyzed and tracked and probably recorded. I'm bummed out, I'm bummed out, I'm bummed out, I'm bummed out. Boy, this guy's really bummed out. Okay? Or this guy really likes pizza. Most of his tweets have a pizza emoji. Can you imagine that? These guys have taken giving you access to communications tools, and they're tracking what you do. So you know that your emails are being stored. You know that they're going to be pulled out for later use. You know that you can watch television series that show how the government corporation people research what you texted, what you tweeted, what your emails say. They bring them up. So why would anybody say anything that you don't want the big brother, the government corporation, to know about? Think about that. Here's one more piece. So how does Google track its users' location outside of location history? New investigation led by the Associated Press found out that some Google apps automatically store time-stamped location data without asking, even when you've paused location history. Google is tracking where you are. So Google stores a snapshot of where you are when you open its Maps application. Now, we're not smart enough now to figure out where we are on a paper map, reading road signs and landmarks. No. We have to have our telephone tell us. So, Rick, there's a big change in the automotive industry. We all know that General Motors is working on laying off 15,000 people. Ford is rumored to be laying off 25,000 people and closing 5 to 6 plants as it shifts from the internal combustion engine, gasoline-powered, to electric-powered vehicles. And electric-powered vehicles, as I see them, have a few problems, the largest of which is the range. So I'm looking at the range statistics of electric cars. So the Hyundai Ioniq, IONIQ electric car has a range of 124 miles. Volkswagen's e-Golf, 125. Nissan's Leaf, 151. Chevrolet Bolt, with a B, B-O-L-T, 238. Tesla Model X 100D, range 295 miles. Tesla Model 3, range 310. And the Tesla S 100D, range 335. So, in the lower end, the cars will get a little over 100 miles on a charge. And a charge takes way longer than filling up a gasoline tank. So I think that people are going to be somewhat reluctant to switch from internal combustion engine to electric cars. What are your thoughts, Rick?
I think that solar panels for these mobile units is a concept that's what the top of your car might be used for. unless you like a convertible. I have a friend that bought an electric car, and I had designed a set of solar panels that when he's not driving his car, he opens his trunk, folds them out into the sunlight, and lets it charge right there rather than having to go to a charging station. And I think that that's our future, just like solar sails would be used in space, where you fold these big sails out and collect the light from the sun. Now, even in deep space, they are that efficient. And that's the way we did it in the 17th century. I just was thinking of a movie just then when I said that, called Iron Man, and that's the way I do it, like my father, and then the mountain blows apart. I think that electricity is an older concept of technology that we should move away from. Personally, I would like, this is an epoch for trial by fire, and I'm reminded of solar, electricity. I'm reminded of nuclear energy, the sun again. I think that there was a book written called Ecotopia by Michael Tobias. Ernest Callenbeck. He was a neighbor of mine in Seattle when I was 10 years old, and he wrote a book called Ecotopia, where the United States, the Free State of Jefferson, which back then was Washington, Oregon, and California, seceded from the Union in 1984, and then opened their borders in the year 2000, 1999, to allow reporters in to see how ecological ways of living would be. This is a very old book. And everything there were no automobiles. Everything was bicycle. That meant your neighbors and your concepts of travel were more limited. And if you wanted to go, let's say, 200 or 400 miles away, it became semi-ordeal, like a wagon train. And that when you visited people, you always brought a housewarming gift because of the ordeal of having to make a journey of that kind of magnitude. Our whole concept of right here, right now, me first, has lost value in country living. And while there are a lot of people now starting to realize that these values are more important than we previously realized, I've got a story. I don't know if we have the time for this, but my girlfriend Julia is down in California right now visiting her folks, and her boy just flew in from New York, and so she's visiting with family. And she started to visit some of her old friends since living with me up here in Oregon, down in California, L.A. And all they talk about is the money, and all they talk about is how much their home is worth. And, you know, I'm broke. I don't have any money. I'm going to have to pay for some repairs that I don't even have the money to pay for. And yet I consider myself far more wealthy. In memories, all of the things in my home are things that were given to me. I didn't buy them. And it's an eclectic home, like a museum. And every time I walk into a room, I'll see a picture on a wall, a statue like a medicine pipe or a didgeridoo or something, and it brings me back to when I received that and the memories. And for me, it's a complete different way of living than what most people have previously thought was important. And this is now seen in education. This is seen in medicine. One size doesn't fit all. I don't want to keep up with the Joneses. I'm not trying to compete with anything like that. And so the values, that's what makes us unique and different from each other. And I'm so grateful.
Rick, are you saying
Am I what?
Are you saying that the topic of discussion was
in California is always about
things?
Yeah, how much the property that they bought in 1987, how much it's increased in value. And, you know, I paid $200,000 for it, and now my home's worth $370,000. That's what's important, how much their equity has increased, like as if that's important. Whereas a place like where you were, and your mother and her little garden out there in the forest, I thought that way. It's just a different way of living in L.A., and I am so glad that, California is literally being taken apart right now to give back to China. People don't see it that way, but the writing is on the wall. There's all kinds of things going on where Moonbeam, their governor, Jerry Brown, we call him Moonbeam. Yeah, that whole thing is creepy, what's going on down there in California in terms of China wanting in. This is what Agenda 21 was about. When Paradise burned this last month, they're not letting people back in to rebuild. They're not allowed to rebuild their home for at least 2.5 years. Now, why is that? I wouldn't want to live there. Oh no! You know, how did Crocodile Dundee put it to his girlfriend out in the wild when she's eating alligator or something, and he opens up a can of beans? Well, you can live on it, but I wouldn't eat it.
Well, yeah, Rick, let me tell you what the. Values. Let me tell you what the topic of discussion here at the farmhouse was just before the broadcast started today. We have 36 tons of crushed limestone being delivered right now as we speak, and for our driveway. This is just to fill in the ruts in our driveway.
Okay.
Because of the heavy rains that we had, a couple months ago.
Right.
So we've got our backhoe out there. There are two really large dump trucks with gravel, and we're applying gravel to fill in the holes. That's what we're talking about. So we're not talking about how much our farm has appreciated or depreciated. We're talking about survival, things that we have to do to keep going. Because it's like this. If we don't fill in these ruts, we're going to tear up the bottom of the vehicles, because the bottom of the vehicles will be damaged by driving through these ruts. And when the belly of the car or truck hits the driveway, so we have to fill them in. So it's a cost benefit kind of a thing, and finding dirt here is a big deal, because there's not a lot of dirt around here. It's mostly rocks in the mountains. That's the way the mountains are, mostly rocks, big rocks. I mean, we can find a rock we can easily find a rock that weighs 1,000 pounds. It's easy to do. We can easily find rocks that weigh 20 pounds apiece. It's easy to do. But the 1,000-pound rocks are too big to fill in the holes in the driveway, and so are the 20-pound. I mean, filling the holes with something the size of a bowling ball is kind of difficult. It's too big. So we bought some gravel. But that's what life on the farm is. It's like on the list of things to do, which are the most important? Because the list is way bigger than the accomplishments would be. We can't get it all done. So we picked the biggest ones. And John Statmiller's on his way here to the farm today. And I said to our son, we've got to grade the driveway because his car will get lost in the ruts. Because he's driving a small car, and literally it'll bottom out in the driveway. So we're fixing the driveway so he can get here. But that's just kind of the way it is. Now, your problem today is a little different problem, right? What are you facing?
Well, I've got a septic tank that needs to be cleaned and pumped, and that's going to happen this morning. We've had heavy rains, and all of a sudden it's starting to back up in my basement. So I had Mr. Rooter out helping me yesterday, and we'll see where that all goes today. It's interesting lifestyle, quite different.
When we come back, let's teach the class a little bit about septic systems, how they work, and what to think about. Class, if you have a home with a septic system, let me just give you a brief description of how this works. Your sinks, toilets, showers, laundry tub, washing machine, dishwasher are typically connected to a plumbing system that all goes downhill. And there's a pipe, typically a 4-inch pipe, that is connected to your house, and it runs into a septic tank. Septic tank is typically a concrete tank, and it can be 500 gallons, 1,000 gallons, 1,500 gallons, typically in size. Ours happens to be 1,500 gallons. And this concrete tank holds everything that goes down the drain. Solids, liquids, laundry detergent, all that. And what happens is this tank has an inlet and an outlet. And the inlet will let in whatever goes down your drain into the concrete tank. The solids, through a bacterial type action, the solids will settle out into the bottom of the tank. So let's say the bottom third of the tank is what's called sludge, the heavy solids. Then above that you have kind of a clear zone or semi-clear water that floats on top of the sludge. And then on top of that you have something called a cap or scum, which would be, like let's say you wash your frying pan out and you've got some oils in there, or oils from your skin that go down the shower or the bathtub, oils that are in food. And they will form this cap on top that kind of rides on the clear liquid above the sludge. So what happens now is the more you use your septic tank, the more sludge you accumulate in the bottom. So the sludge starts at it starts at zero when the tank is new, and it starts building a layer higher and higher and higher. And when it gets to about 40% of the tank volume, you're going to want to pump it out. Now, how long does that take? Well, according to the internet, you should have your septic system pumped out every couple of years, maybe 3 years. That's crazy. It's absolutely nuts. That's like, why would you do that? In our case, we've had, in Virginia, our septic tank was 1,000 gallons. In Missouri, it's 1,500 gallons, as I said. And we pumped ours out in Virginia after about 10 years, and it probably only had 20% solids. And we had ours pumped out in Missouri a couple of years ago, let's say a little over 10 years of use, 20% solids at the most. So what happens next with your septic tank is the clear liquids flow downhill into a distribution box, which was probably connected to what's called laterals. And laterals are pipes in the ground that will allow the clear liquids to drain into the soil, probably 3 or 4 feet below the grass level of the soil. And that those liquids will evaporate through the soil. The grasses will consume, absorb the liquids, which is perfectly fine, and evaporate those liquids. So your septic system should not overflow from too much use if you don't have a lot of rain. If you have a lot of rain and the soil in the drain field becomes saturated, there's not much place for that liquid from your septic tank to go. That's a problem. So if you have heavy rains, you want to reduce the use of your septic system. Now, when you pump it out, I'll tell you a little bit more about what to do when you pump it out when we come back and how much that should cost. But I got to tell you, the last thing you want to put in a septic system is paper products. Toilet paper is okay. Paper towels, no. Cloth towels, no. Sanitary feminine products, absolutely not. We're talking about septic systems, and I wanted to share a little bit of information with our class. So, a 1,000-gallon septic system tank should be able to be pumped out for between $175 and between $175 and $275. The internet says $200 to $300, but I think that's a little bit high. And older septic systems had piping that was made out of this black pipe. It was a combination of tar and paper. It's called Orangeburg pipe. And Orangeburg was easily cracked. So if you have trees that have roots that are going out toward your septic system, the trees, the roots can, as they grow, as the tree gets bigger, they can crack the Orangeburg pipe. And if they do, there'll be an interruption in the flow to or from your septic system, which can cause it to back up. So that's something that you might want to think about if you have a problem. If you have a lateral type septic system, those laterals are typically about 100 feet long or so, and they use 4-inch drain pipe with holes in the bottom. And those pipes are set in a bed of crushed stone. So what happens is the clear liquid, sometimes called gray water, will leach into the ground through these laterals. And there generally is never problems with laterals. They just work and work and work for decades. Well, there's another kind of a septic system that is made with a leaching tank. Instead of laterals, it's just concrete blocks placed one on top of another without mortar in a cylinder type formation. Just blocks made in a circle, let's say 6 to 8 feet in diameter, stacked one on top of another, and what happens is the gray water, if you will go into that tank and will leak through the cracks in the stacked concrete blocks into the ground. It's not quite as good as the lateral system, in my opinion, but it works, and there's a concrete lid they place on that. Now, sometimes when you call a septic system guy to clean out your septic system, he may find that round stacked concrete tank, and he'll pump that out. But it does no good. It doesn't do any good to pump that out because it'll fill right back up with gray water. The problem is typically in the septic tank, not the leaching tank. And when you have your septic tank pumped out, you want to leave about an inch of solids in the bottom. You don't want to pump it all out. And why is that? Because there's bacteria in those solids that are necessary to restart the growth to degrade the solids that are entering the septic tank after you pump it out. Now the question is, what happens to the solids? Well, they're in a tank and they get hauled away. Where do they go? Well, in Missouri, and I'm sure in other locations where there's plenty of farms, a lot of times they go right on the grass. The septic tank guy will have an adapter that he's made that will, if he drives forward and opens the valve, all those solids and liquids will come right out of the tank and he'll drive around the fields. So what are those fields used for? Typically growing grass or crops. Now, if they're disinfected by the sun, that might be okay. But if you have a person in your house that's on chemotherapy, it will absolutely, positively destroy the grass. It's toxic. But that's what's happening. I'm not saying I advocate this. I'm just telling you this is what's happening. Then when the grass does grow back, cows eat the grass. And you can have your favorite hamburger that's been fed solids from chemotherapy patients and other drugs. So what should you not put in your septic system? Well, you shouldn't put in paper towels. Shouldn't put in dental floss. flushable wipes, sanitary pads or tampons, grease, oil. Chlorine's rough on them. Chlorine kills the bacteria, but chlorine is not as bad for the bacteria in your septic tank as those harsh chemicals that you might put in your septic tank. You're like drain cleaner. It's brutal on a septic tank. So we found a guy who pumps out septic systems, and we asked him, what happens. And so when he applies the solids on farm fields like his, he finds tampons and all over his field. I mean, it's kind of a gross thing. So if you have visitors, you might want to say, I tell you what, if you happen to need to dispose of these products, kindly don't flush them down the toilet. Put them in the trash, please, and give them a bag to do that. So that's my thoughts in a nutshell on septic systems. Any questions, Rick?
Well, no, I'm taking notes. I appreciate your knowledge based on this because this is my first merry-go-round, and I'm just now learning, studying what is and what is not wanting me to do. When I had my backup coming out, I found things that I never put down the drain coming up my toilet. Rifle shells, bullets. I can't believe what's coming out of the drain right now. It's really creepy.
Yeah.
Well, it is. It's creepy.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. People will flush things with no consideration, no concern about what happens next. What happens?
How did they do this 100 years earlier? Yeah. What happened to the old outhouse? I can tell you.
I can tell you with absolute certainty. So we bought this farm. It's 241 acres. And there's a grade A dairy barn, which is like a Dutch roofed barn. It's red. It was there from the 1940s. And there was a milk house from the 1940s right next to that, where a milking parlor where the cows were brought in for being milked by hand. And then outside of that was an outhouse. And the outhouse is still standing. Well, it's kind of leaning right now. But we do have an outhouse. It hasn't probably been used in 30 or 40 years. But that's how it's done. And an outhouse is simply this. It's like a closet with a roof outside. And there is a board that you can sit on with a round hole in it. Kind of like a toilet seat without a seat. It's just a board. And it has a round hole. And what happens is whatever goes down that hole goes lower than the ground level. And it just goes into the ground. And the liquids get absorbed by the ground and they evaporate. It's as simple as that. And they last a really long time. And you don't have to have them pumped out. The only problem is that in the middle of the night, if you have to, go, you go outside into the outhouse or, into a container inside. And I think that's where the term chamber pot came from. You have this pot with a lid, and they get emptied in the morning. And chambermaids would sometimes get the honor of emptying the chamber pots. So that's how it was done before the water closet. And I think the reason they call them water closets is because houses were built without toilets. And they found the best place to put these toilets were in these small closets. And they found out that using water would be a great way to flush, and the water plus whatever was in the toilet would run downhill, and it was a great way to go. So water closet was the term for bathrooms originally. That's what they were called. But there are still outhouses in many parts of rural America. Farms have them. And they're less and less common. But the question is, what happens to all of this stuff that's pumped out of your septic tank if it's not sprayed or dumped on fields as some kind of fertilizer? Well, it goes to a water treatment plant, to a municipality, and the septic tank guy, the guy who pumped it out, will pay a fee to dump the load in the tank into the water treatment system. And then it gets mixed with chlorine, and the bacteria is killed. And then sometimes it's sold as fertilizer or potting soil. Can you imagine that? So that, when you reach into a bag of potting soil, pull out a handful or two, you might want to think about where it came from. And Philadelphia, back in the 70s, was implementing a marketing campaign where you could get free what they called Philly soil, as in Philadelphia. And what it was whatever was flushed down the drain, hospital waste, industrial waste, paintbrushes that were cleaned out in the kitchen sink, feces, parts from the veterinary clinic, everything that went down the drain, contraceptives, vitamins, used minerals, used medication, everything down the drain, and it went into Philly soil. And you could get it for free. Can you imagine that? You could have all that stuff for free and put it in your garden. That's marketing. And that's the truth. And that's what happened. Can you imagine that? And in rural Virginia, you can get this stuff right from the septic treatment plant, and they'll spray it on your fields, and your fields will stink for 3 years. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with us. RichardAllenMiller.com. RichardALAN Miller.com. Rick, do you have any items that you'd like to share with us at this point?
Yeah, I'm gonna be. Yes, I do, but you don't want to hear them. Trust me. Just make me angry every time I think about what's going on. I love America, and I am saddened to see what's going on in the media. The media is so bad now. I can't even begin to fathom why. There's already media headline news of individuals being caught lying with falsifying reports, making up news to sell. Now, I remember when we had tabloids, and the tabloids were always the impulse buying set next to the cash register, and they'd had all these unbelievable stories of, Vincent Finelli actually being an alien or something like that. They'd have these outrageous stories. And now I'm finding the internet is, when you do Bing or Google, did you know that Google is even outlawed in China? And you ought to see what China is doing right now in spying on their public. I'm not kidding. It is unbelievable. I posted something yesterday on Facebook under the DocRamCom section of Facebook, DocRamCom, that that's another thing that was irritating me. I used to own DocRam.com, and that was my Facebook page. And because my original webmaster died, I lost that address, and now it's being held for ransom for $20,000. In other words, if I want,
I got to tell you, yes, you're absolutely right, Rick. Joey sent me an email about that, and Joey and I tried to get it back for you. And that pig that pig who's holding it for ransom. Absolutely
I can't believe
immoral.
how they do that. Who's got
Immoral.
$20,000 for a website address? That is crazy, especially since I owned it and my webmaster died.
You worked on it. You built it. We promoted it for years here on USA Prepares. And that pig, I hope he calls me. That pig is holding it at ransom for literally $20,000.
Yeah, he'll give me a bargain at $18,000 if I want to settle with cash or something. Yeah,
I'll tell you what I'd like to do. I would like to go to his house. I'd like to go to his house with some of our instructors in our class and just say hi. How you doing? Just wanted to meet you. We wanted to see what kind of ilk it takes to be like this, what kind of greed it takes, and I hope he chokes on it. I hope if he's going to do this, I hope he owns it forever.
By the way, my thanks to you and Joe for doing that for me. I didn't know you tried to help me on that. Thank you. It's unbelievable.
Well,
that's very nice of you and Joey. Thank you.
Well, Joey's on top of a lot of things.
Yeah, I know.
Joey is, he's brilliant. He is absolutely brilliant. In class, Joey, there's no grass that grows under Joey in Michigan's feet. None. He's the kind of guy who looks at the big picture, the long picture, the short picture. He looks at it all and figures out the best way to do it. He's the kind of guy who, if he needs a part on a vehicle, and it's an expensive part like an engine or a transmission or rear end, and he'll do research to find out if it's a better value for him to buy another vehicle, take out the parts he needs, and then sell the vehicle that's left over. Or if it involves fabrication with steel and welding and cutting, he knows how to do that. He's absolutely brilliant. His IQ is really high. And Joey is as frustrated with what he sees in America as we are. Dr. Richard Allen Miller's with his class. Facebook. I can't stand Mark Zuckerberg. Facebook, according to Daily Mail, secretly allowed Netflix and Spotify users to read your private messages. Facebook secretly allowed Netflix and Spotify to read your private messages and shared your personal data. Let me say that a different way. And shared your personal data with Silicon Valley giants Amazon and Microsoft as recently as last summer. Now, how many of these messages were exposed, or how many messages Facebook granted access? Facebook granted access to hundreds? No, not hundreds. Thousands? No, not thousands. Tens of thousands? No, not tens of thousands. Hundreds of thousands? No. Millions? No. Hundreds of millions of users' data to 150 companies. Facebook. Facebook gave access to your private information. Gave. I'm sure they sold it.
Yeah, this is where the artificial intelligence can outstrip man by analyzing with algorithms all kinds of informations about you in seconds with hundreds of millions of communications. And you are profiled to such a point that today in Chicago, they are actually using these systems with facial recognition and other Facebook information to profile when an event or crime is going to be committed 28 minutes before it occurs.
Well, this really annoys me. it annoys me so much that I don't even want to go out. I don't want to go to the stores because facial recognition is being deployed in lots of places, including there's an airport that I was reading about where they now have full body scanners. I believe it's Denver. I don't have the article in front of me, but I believe it's Denver, where full body scans are being deployed. So, hey, but this is so good because we can pick up a few seconds for each traveler who goes through screening. So all you do is you just spread your legs, class. They've got this full body scanner, and you spread your legs. You put your feet on these markers on the floor. You're going to be spread eagle, standing up, and they're going to look through you. They're going to look through you. And people are doing this. And we've allowed it. We've allowed it because we fly. What we should all stop doing is flying. Just stop. Just stop flying. Can you imagine that? The airlines are allowing it. The airports are allowing it. The government corporation is requiring it. And the GDP is saying, well, you know, I'd rather be x-rayed than have some guy feel my body through my clothes. I'm not flying. I'm not doing it. I'm not going to be killed slowly through x-rays I don't need just to hop on some aluminum tube with recycled air. I'm not going to do it. Rick, you mentioned facial recognition. Amazon. Yeah. I mean, we used to have companies. I mentioned Ford and General Motors with their layoffs. They used to actually make a product. Now they make a forced obsolescence product, series of products. But they're laying off people to move toward electric cars. Now, imagine this. If you've got an electric car, that's really easy to control. Satellite signals. Well, you know what? That blue one over there, serial number 123, shut it down right where it is. And lock the doors. Shut it down and lock the doors right where it is. And the police, here are the coordinates. Go get them. Can you imagine that? You got to be crazy to have a car with GPS tracking and all these electronic locks. You know, for me, it's going to be really difficult if I'm driving my 2004 work truck with crank-up windows and mechanical door locks. The only thing that it's got that's really nice is air conditioning. That's it. Crank-up windows, manual door locks, no frills, no features, no heated seats, none of that. Rubber mat on the floor. But the government corporation can't shut it down unless they get close to me and hit the computer with some kind of a electromagnetic pulse. Other than that, because it's got a computer, other than that, they're going to have a tough time with me. And my old Mercedes, my 1996 mechanical fuel injection, that thing's going to keep going. It's not going to be shut down by an electromagnetic pulse. Now, of course, you know, a tire strip, you know, where they put these sharp objects on a track across the road, and that'll slow me down. But other than that, they're not going to be able to shut me down from a satellite or an electromagnetic pulse if I'm driving my old mechanical fuel injection Mercedes. That's why I have it. Because I don't want to be a victim to the government corporation. So we're talking about facial recognition. Amazon is another ugly guy, Jeff Bezos. And by the way, class, all the things that I say are my opinions. And I guess it's still illegal. I'm sorry, it's still not illegal to have an opinion. So I'm saying that these are my opinions about Bezos and Gates and Zuckerberg and Greenspan as being ugly people. Well, Amazon launches a disturbing plan, according to Daily Mail, to add facial recognition technology to doorbells. Now think about this. So the GDP, the generally dumb public, says, hey, honey, this is great. We can get a doorbell. And it's made by a company called Ring, R-I-N-G. Amazon bought them, acquired them. And they've got a smart doorbell, and it's got facial recognition capabilities. Well, you know that your doorbell is not capable of holding the millions of images of all the people that are in the database. You know that. So it's got to be connected to the internet. So now you know that your doorbell with its camera is going to send the images that it receives from people coming to your door, including you, because you're probably going to use the same door that other people use, and sending that information to the cloud, to the servers that Amazon controls with more images. So not only are they going to get all the images from the license plate pictures, Walmart's pictures, but from your front door. I can't stand it. I can't stand it. And I'm going to call Deborah Brewster because she's having a little get-together with some instructors. I'm going to call her and say, Deborah, I'd like to suggest that you consider putting a note on your door for your little Christmas get-together that says no cell phones. As a matter of fact, there are going to be people there talking about these kinds of things, and maybe my little part will be talking about how outraged I am about people carrying their cell phones everywhere, and they can be turned on without your knowledge and record everything that the cell phone sees and hears, wherever you happen to be. We've been talking about this for years. The GDP doesn't understand it. The GDP doesn't care. The GDP says, yeah, I'm not doing anything wrong. It's okay. It's not okay. We need to bring back drawing and quartering. I got a backhoe that I'll let people use if we're going to be drawing and quartering people for crimes against all life forms. You can't even go out now without being photographed or tracked. You can't. You can't even do a search on your computer without being tracked. And so when you think about Bill Gates being a philanthropist, you need to knock that thought right out of your mind. He's not. Bezos is not. Apple is not. None of these people are. And what is it? What is it about these ugly people where they have to be sexual predators? That's because they didn't get their face transplant. They're that ugly. I don't know what happened, Rick, but I'm really annoyed. I've got a short fuse now. I don't like it.
Well, I've got one for you, Vincent. I've got something to make you this grin. I posted something a couple of days ago on a former NASA engineer that he's retired, sitting at home, and got tired of his packages being delivered to his house that were being taken by his neighbors. They walked down the street with backpacks, and they'd see a package on someone's porch that they hadn't picked up yet because it was dropped off by UPS or whatever, and they'd steal it. And this guy set a trap. I gave you the link. I hope you post it. It is the funniest.
I've read it.
Now, that's the kind of news I would like to see more happening in our media.
He'll probably get sued because he'll probably get sued because this thing is explosive. What happens is you go to open the package, boom, it comes out with a radial, like a cyclone almost, of confetti, and you get covered in it. But this darn thing's expensive to make. It's got a computer board. It's got
I know, it's wonderful.
Propellant. It's expensive to make this. Okay, now I guess it's fun, but maybe he's going to be arrested for making what people might call a bomb. Yeah, I think it's humorous. I'd rather see whoever goes to steal these packages getting spray painted, you know. But of course that's dangerous too, because they'll say, "Well, I got lung cancer from the spray paint." Rick, I need to preface next story with a little bit of information from the past. Back in the 1980s, I worked for a large bank, and we had these file cabinets, with stored paper documents, and they're all over this very large floor where we had people working at computers, people who were working in the telephones. Hundreds of people were on this floor. So it was a large floor. And we had filing cabinets. And the bank wanted them to all be the same color. And so they hired a company to electrostatically paint them. So what they have is this machine, and there's a cable with a clamp on the cable. And what you do is you can put down a tarp in the middle of a room, let's say a 10-foot by 10-foot tarp. You put the filing cabinet on it. You connect the clamp to the metal part of the filing cabinet, and you spray paint with this electrostatic charged spray paint gun. And the paint flies right onto the filing cabinet, which is connected to this cable. So the filing cabinet is electrostatically charged. And you don't have to worry about the surrounding ceiling tiles and all that being painted because it's not electrostatically charged. It worked great. Except across the room, a guy left his computer monitor on, and the paint flew across the room and painted the computer monitor. Now, the reason I'm mentioning all that is because there's a story on dailymail.co.uk about it's going to be tough to live on the moon because the lunar surface is filled with, or is comprised of, we'll call it soil, that is electrostatically charged, and it gets on everything. So they have these photographs, allegedly, of an astronaut walking around on, allegedly, the moon's surface, and he's covered with this dark gray dust. Now, I've never seen that before. When you look at the astronauts, they've got these pristine spacesuits on. Not this guy. This guy looks like, he's been changing oil under large equipment for weeks without changing his clothes. This guy's filthy. And it says, it shows him on the surface of the moon. Well, obviously it's faked. Obviously it's fake because the shadows go in three different directions, which is impossible. The sun is a single light source, so it wouldn't cast shadows in three different directions. But that's what they show in these faked photographs of this dusty astronaut. Do you think it's possible that we could ever live on the moon? Because they're saying that the electrostatically charged dust will get in our lungs and kill us.
There's strong evidence that Germany has set up a base up there. There's evidence that the Buddhists in a previous epoch had space flight and went to the moon, and there's vehicles that are crashed on the other side of the moon. There is evidence now, reproducible evidence, that something's going on, and I think it's Mare Imbrium, I'm not sure which one it is, where there are straight lines that are not from lava lines, but too straight, that have lights that regularly appear on and off, that are being captured by numerous. John Lear is the one that has talked about that, but it's been reproduced by amateur astronomers. I know that there's some kind of breakaway technology where some humans have left Earth and gone somewhere else. I have no idea where that is, because when I was in Antarctica, and that's the only thing I can use as a reference point, I saw a Nazi base in Antarctica. It was destroyed. Looked like it had been hit with a nuclear weapon. And I saw a Viking base from the 14th century. Where's that in our history books?
Well, actually, it's not. It's not. I haven't read that.
But Admiral Byrd captured film of Foo Fighters and jets that didn't exist, that were sinking ships.
Dr. Richard Allen Miller, class, if you'd like to go to his website, Richard, A-L-A-N Miller, richardallenmiller.com.